How are you? Because I heard you were sick a week ago.
Oh, I actually had COVID last week.
You did?
For the first time knowingly that I've had it.
Okay.
I had a cough for quite a long time in 2020, so I might have had it then, but this is the first time I've knowingly had it. So it's really quite strange. I've been socially mixing with people, usual things, quite intensely, not taking any precautions against COVID since all the difficult period, shall we say, passed. and then last week I got it. It was, I wouldn't say it was a mild illness, but it was nothing like influenza.
Okay.
I've said before, if you got proper flu, proper influenza. I remember once I came home from work with influenza in 1991, and I was going to bed, and I got to the bedroom floor and couldn't get into bed.
Yeah.
I was so sick, and I thought if I die now, that's okay.
That's influenza. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I knew it wasn't anything like that, and just turning my phone off. I always forget to turn my phone off, and I knew it wasn't a cold because I wasn't having really the streamy type symptoms. So I was just a bit knocked off, bit of a low grade fever. But I got the rash. I got quite an itchy rash.
Yeah, I've seen your video about it, and you showed it. It was on your arm somewhere. You showed the rash, but you had it multiple sites on your body.
Yeah, I had a bit of a rash. So, but anyway, things are good now.
Okay.
Always very important to keep up your natural immunity, especially over winter. I think you're not quite as far north as we are, but I'm at 55 degrees north. It's preposterous. People shouldn't be living up here.
Oh, that's true. But on the other hand, cold is good for you as well.
Oh yeah. Be
in the cold.
It just means you don't make the vitamin D over winter.
Well, it's troublesome, but people lived where you live for a long time, and they were healthy. So I think that the secret is to be outdoors and to keep moving and go for a walk every day if you can.
It's a good point. People have lived here for a long time.
We should be outdoors, and then even the cold is good for you. Helps you prepare for
that's right.
And it's important. But let us start.
More contact with nature.
I still have to introduce you.
Go for it. Yeah.
We had some phone conversations, so we know each other a little bit, and that's the reason we start talking straight away. But I mean, I'm talking right now with Dr. John Campbell, and that's quite an honor for me to
Not at all.
At least it feels as an honor to me. Let us introduce you properly, because as we know, I'm Dutch. I've checked with some Dutch people, do you know John Campbell? And some people do indeed know you, but some people don't. They don't know about your channel, which is a very important channel, I think. So John Campbell is a medical doctor, but he as well is a nurse. And that is something confusing for Dutch people. Could you explain what the difference is?
Yeah, right. Okay. So I'm not actually a medical doctor.
You're not?
I was a nurse all my life.
Okay.
I started when I was 18. I was a psychiatric nurse, then a general nurse.
Okay.
And then I wanted to teach, so I became something called a nurse tutor.
Okay.
And then we had a prime minister in the 1990s. I think his name was Tony Blair, something like that. And he moved us all into higher education.
Okay.
So we ended up in a university. So I did a Bachelor of Science degree, a Master of Science degree. I did a Doctor of Philosophy degree.
Okay.
And then when I got the Doctor of Philosophy degree, I changed my name from John Campbell to Dr. Campbell. This was before people were known on the YouTube. So I'm a doctor by virtue of my PhD.
Okay.
But I have spent all my life in nursing, medical, bioscience. The textbooks I've written, for example, I've written a textbook on human physiology. I've written a textbook on disease processes, pathophysiology.
Yeah, you wrote 2 books.
Yeah. And before, if you want to put the link, you can download them free. They're on PDF now. They're completely free.
That's good.
Yeah. And so I've always done biomedical things. And then when I became more popular, I realized that the doctor title was causing some confusion. But by that time, that's what I was already known as, so I didn't change it. So I'm a doctor of philosophy and a lifelong clinical and academic teaching nurse.
That's good.
Basically, I've spent my life working with people, thinking about diseases, thinking about how the body works, thinking about how the body goes wrong, and trying to treat illness, relieve pain, relieve suffering, and massively importantly is prevent illness.
Okay.
To optimize health, and that includes physical health.
Yep.
Of course, it also includes mental health.
Okay.
Which is just so important. There's just so many people. I don't know what it's like for you, Nikko, but I meet so many people, and once you know them a little bit, and especially if they know you've got a healthcare background, they'll say, John, I do have, to tell you the truth, and they find it difficult to say, I have a bit of problems with anxiety, or I have problems with depression, or I have problems with obsessive thoughts, or my mind keeps going back to this particular traumatic time. There's a lot of people really suffering out there, and I think we have to be much more attuned to that and listen to people and be aware of what they need and help those around us.
It's good that you say that, because I didn't want to talk about it, but I wrote a book on health. I even have it here. Show you. It's called the Caveman Code. It's being translated into English right now, in which I try to help people with their general health, which I think is important, because somehow we get lost in this modern world and somehow forget about our to keep fit and to eat well, etc.
Yeah.
So
the trick with the modern world, Nikko, is to take out the good bits and spit out the bad bits.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's difficult to tell which is which.
And that's exactly what I wrote a book about. Just throw out all the bad things and keep the good things. And if you look at the good things, we live in an age where it's so easy to get all the good things, because it would have been impossible for you living up close to Scotland to get a coconut and a mango, and now you can get that, and you can live as healthy as you want to, as long as you know what to do, what to get out of your life, and what to get in.
And so with the right knowledge, usually, not always, but usually, if you've got the right knowledge and the interest in this, it's usually possible to live a healthy lifestyle that's also inexpensive.
Yep.
So if people are struggling for money and resources, many people are, and it's sometimes easiest to pick up some ultra processed biscuits.
Yeah.
But actually, if you look at it, in my local supermarket, very often you can get greens really cheaply.
Yeah.
You can get potatoes really cheaply.
Yeah.
Eggs you can usually get for a reasonable price.
Yeah.
And if you think about just those basic things, and fruit, very often you can get for a reasonable price as well. So you can go in and one day apples will be cheaper, or one day bananas will be cheaper, or one day oranges will be cheaper. So just get what's available, because our ancestors, as you know well, would have eaten seasonally.
Yep.
So it's like when my plum tree's out on my allotment, I'll eat maybe a kilo of plums. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but that's what I do. I love them. But now there's no plums there now, so I don't eat plums now. So.
No, but the beautiful thing right now is that you can't eat plums, but so many things that you couldn't eat in winter, like 400 years ago, you can eat in winter, because they still get into your store. It's just like you have to shop like an old-fashioned hunter-gatherer. So you have to get into Tesco with the idea that you start hunting and gathering. And that's what I write in my book. And so certain aisles you certainly have to not pass through, and the other aisles you have to pay a little more attention to what's being sold there.
Yeah.
But people often tell me, well, the way you want me to eat is very expensive, and it's not true, because for
not
example,
necessarily.
I think it's a good thing to eat a lot of nuts and berries and things like that, and they are expensive. But then when you've bought your first supply, you will only have like 40 grams of them every morning. So the first supply, of course, is expensive and it holds people back. But once you have bought that and put it in proper jars, they will last for a long time. So if you think about it, it's not as expensive as you think it would be. And
it requires some knowledge and some mental input, which is really important.
Yep.
And I think the other thing we're missing out is the therapeutic effects and the disease preventing effects of all these things. So I'm no authority on this at all. I've spent my life giving out traditional medicines made by Big Pharma.
Yep.
It's what we do. We follow national guidelines, and we can maybe talk more about that later. Now, of course, drugs are completely necessary. I've saved many, many people's lives by giving them drugs, of course. We need those, but so many things, so many specific nutrients that, as you say, can be inexpensive.
Yeah.
So, for example, I've started a few times a week. I now have turmeric milk.
Okay.
So I boil up some milk with some turmeric and a little bit of black pepper, and you know what? It tastes really good.
Yeah. And when you add the black pepper, it has a lot more value, the turmeric.
Yeah, so I believe. Yeah, I'm just learning about these things, but the point is, once you get into the habit of it, it's actually really nice. So I look forward to it now.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be out on my walk and I think, oh, I can have my turmeric milk when I get home. I'm looking forward to this. You know,
no, but that's a good thing, and it's so that's what all my method is based upon, to change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
All of this. So
and if you got that kind of treat to look forward to, then you can take out less healthy treats.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't know. Maybe there's been times in your life where you think, oh, I'll get home and have a beer. You know,
no, but
well, in my life there has. You know, I think, oh, I'll get home and have a beer, you know, and you kind of look forward to that. But if you can substitute that with something else,
true.
Then, you know, you can take out things that aren't so good for you and put in things that are good.
Yeah,
for
but
you.
there is one thing. The last few decades, we've grown so accustomed to eat and drink sweet and salt things.
Yeah.
If you take salt and sweet out of the picture, then there's so many tastes that are wonderful, but we are no longer used to them. We want those sweet and salt things, and you have to step away from that and start looking for different tastes, which are very good once you get used to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're addicted to those things. I think the salt and the sugar are addictive.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to say so, but in my book, I tell people.
I'm quite comfortable saying that there's been times in my life where I've been addicted to salt and sugar. I still have problems with sugar and carbohydrates. I'm trying to cut down, but a lifetime of habit is difficult to change. But you're right; these are such strong flavors.
Yep.
That they overwhelm all the subtlety.
Yep. They overrule everything else.
And we just take so much pleasure.
Yep.
Out of our lives.
Yep.
Just by alcohol, salt, sugar, sugar, high fat, high processed food, and all the delicate, lovely things that are in the created order.
Yeah.
That we could be enjoying, we just kind of mask out. It's almost like we take this immediate gratification, whereas with a bit of thought, we could actually have way more enjoyment and satisfaction and interaction with the created world. It's a pity that we don't do that, because everything's there on the shelf. It's bang, 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 instant gratification.
Yep.
And people don't take the time to enjoy these simple pleasures, but really some of the best things in life. Yeah,
there are the simple pleasures, and that's exactly what I wrote the book about. If you just make a few changes, you start to really appreciate all the beautiful things that are out there and have wonderful tastes. But people are very skeptic until they start doing it, and then they come back to me. Well, I wish I would have learned this 20 years ago.
Yep. So go around, talk to your mother, talk to your grandmother if she's still with you, and learn from the traditional wisdom of our culture.
It's true. And there's a good saying in English, I think. It says, an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
We do have such a saying, yeah. I'm not entirely sure it's guaranteed, but we do have that saying, yes.
It helps, but it is, okay, yeah. But it is good.
But no, fruit and veg. If a food looks like a food, that's good. Yeah. If it's in a packet with a barcode,
you have to be suspicious.
Think about it.
Yeah. But we'll get there, and
I'm not so sure. I'm not sure we will get there, Nikko. You know, there is so much money, so much vested interest, so much advertising, trying to get us to buy their product. Very often pushing us in a direction which is not the one we would want to optimize our health. That's true. So I think there are opposing forces here. There's free voices, like as far as I know yours. I would hope mine. There's a lot of free voices out there that go back to evidence, that go back to the science, and say, look, this is what you are. This is the human condition. We do know something about how to maintain health. We don't always get it right. Many things I've taught, sadly, all my life have been wrong because the guidelines have changed. Yeah, but we are, the science is coming together now. You know, there are basic things that we are pretty sure about now. Well, and then we've got the vested interest trying to push their product onto us. And I think the battle is going to be going on for some time. So I think it just shows the importance of evidence-based, free knowledge, good quality doctors and scientists being honest, teaching what they know. And I mean, I've interviewed some of the leading doctors around the world. You know, it's been a real privilege. For some strange reason, I've got leading doctors and scientists that come and talk to me. I can't work it out, but
I understand.
But you know, there's some really great stuff that they say.
Yeah.
And if occasionally that conflicts with a corporate interest, then who are you going to listen to? Someone who's making a lot of money out of trying to feed you, or give you medication, or whatever it is, or give you a particular lifestyle, or someone who's spent their life, decades maybe, you know, looking at the science, looking at the health, working out what is the optimum way for a human being to live. Which one are you going to listen to? You know, we have that choice, and I think the battle might be going on for some time.
Yeah, but the problem today is that the title doctor, or maybe even having 30 years of experience, doesn't guarantee that the person is completely honest and truthful. I mean, we've learned that over the last 3 years. I'm quite afraid, which is good as well, because we have probably, hopefully, and your channel has helped learn to be a little more skeptical about certain things, and to trust our own feelings at least a little bit. I mean, I'm completely with you. Someone who has a lot of experience, someone who has studied, you should listen to him. You should learn from that person, her, him. But it has become a little bit difficult, a little bit confusing for people. And we should never forget, I think, that we have a little say in it ourselves as well. And I always compare it to having a goldfish. I mean, if you have a goldfish and you go to a pet shop and you want to feed the goldfish, you don't start looking for food at the dog section. You buy fish food. The other way around, if you have a dog, you don't give it fish food. And we have a capacity as people to just understand what is good for us, but we have been misled for a long time on the shelves of supermarkets with the big collars and whatever. And we have slipped away into an unhealthy way of life. But I think that everyone deep in their consciousness knows what is good and what is not good for to eat and to. So you just have to appeal to that sense of normalcy, and people will soon see it. And when they start experimenting with a healthy lifestyle, something changes. Because we have really, is my feeling, the last 40 years, we have truly gone down the drain health-wise. I hope I'm exaggerating, but lots of people turn to me and they have neglected themselves for a long time.
I don't think you're exaggerating. No, I would add that I think you do need some basic knowledge to add to that. I mean, when I first got my allotment, is that term translate allotment? Do you have allotments in Netherlands? It's like a patch of land. It's about 100 square meters. I rent it from the council.
Yeah, piece of land.
You can grow food and trees there. Yeah. When I first got it, over 20 years ago now, but I didn't actually know the parts of the plants that you could eat and the parts of the plant you couldn't eat.
True.
So I had the other old guys around about me, you know, and they say, well, John, you normally throw this leaf away and you eat this bit. Yeah. You know, that there is knowledge that we that we do need there. But isn't it one of the saddest things about this past few years, Nikko, that we can't automatically trust people in leadership?
Well,
because someone's a doctor, you know, because someone's a doctor, we used to think
that's all right.
They had our best interests at heart. Now we're actually in a situation where, of course, most doctors and nurses are brilliant. Of course they are. But we get some doctors, maybe doctors that have sought out leadership positions around the world. And we can't automatically trust what they say.
Nope.
We have to question if they've got other influences on their thinking. And to tell you the truth, I'm not really in a position to judge that. I don't know all these details.
No, but
and what that means is, because there's so many things now, I realize there's problems, realize there's things I don't understand. That tends to make me a bit grumpy and a bit cynical and a bit distrustful.
Yeah.
And this lack of trust is really quite a big problem. We have to try and analyze the evidence for ourselves and find people that we trust, because I don't know what it's like in the Netherlands, but there's we've got an inquiry going on in the UK, and you know, a lot of important things in my view are being left out of that about the COVID inquiry. But it turns out that a lot of politicians made quite a few errors along the way. Quite a few doctors made quite a few errors along the way, and again, so we have difficulty now automatically trusting professionals. We have difficulty automatically trusting politicians, and is that good in that we've become more realistic?
Well, I think for me it's good, because I again had this slap in my face telling me that I have to trust my own common sense, and I have to do my own study, and there is such an easy way to study, because you have the internet. Don't trust it, but if you find consistent information in multiple articles and researches, well, there is a basis of trust there. And well, we had the apple a day analogy earlier. In America, they say money talks, bullshit walks, and you should always be aware of that. And even when it's a man in a white coat or a woman in a white coat, you still have to be slightly suspicious and see whatever he or her says confirmed in other articles. And that's what we learned, at least what I learned over the last 3 years. It was a wake-up call in a sense, and that's how I try to make it a good thing.
I agree with that, and we have to be aware that for most people are automatically programmed almost to conform with authority. So if you take your idea that we're hunter-gatherers, then you know we lived in tribes of maybe 150 people way back when, and the reason that human beings became the dominant species on the planet perhaps is not because we're the strongest, not because we've got the sharpest teeth, not because we've got the sharpest claws, not because we were the fastest, because we worked together. We cooperated. And that meant we had to trust, and there would be a leader, presumably in a hunting expedition, there'd probably be one leader. And if you didn't follow the leader, there's a good chance you wouldn't get back from that hunting expedition. We worked together. But the problem is now we still have this idea where we trust authority. So there's famous experiments. I don't know if you've heard of these, the conformity experiments by Stanley Milgram.
Horrible experience.
Yeah, and you know, basically he set up a mock experiment. He told people to electrocute people with increasing voltages if they got the question wrong. It was the person pressing the button, of course, that was being experimented on. But you had these increasing electric shocks, and most people, because they were ordered to do so, they gave these electric shocks. And you know, something like 70% of people were prepared to give a potentially lethal electric shock, believing they were actually doing that. They actually flicked that. Now, they didn't like it. They laughed. They cried.
They had orders.
They protested. But because the authority figure was giving the order, their finger actually moved that switch. You know, and that is terrifying. So, you know, we've got so many people around about us who, because they're human, are genetically programmed to conform, to obey. And that's okay if we have good leaders, but is that going to be a self-destructive thing now? I think is a very good question to ask ourselves.
I have an even worse example, because I spent 2 years of my life in Afghanistan, and we were supposedly there, the Dutch army, to help the poor Afghan people. Well, I started to look into that, and they weren't so poor. And they weren't in need of any help, because they were quite sufficient for themselves. The only thing is they lived a different life, and they have a proper right to do so. And quite honestly, I'd rather stick with them than get back to the civilization I knew, because they lived a lovely life, and they had rules among them, the tribes. There were very strong rules that kept the tribes alive, and hospitality, you name it. It was all based in certain rules. It was a wonderful life. But the simple fact that we didn't understand them gave us the right to bombard them and to shoot at them at times that it was completely unacceptable. And the only one raising his voice was me. I wrote a book about it. It led to questions in Parliament and etc. But whenever the order was given, triggers were pulled. I mean, we know that from history, and I don't want to talk about that, but I mean, it was appalling to be a part of that and to see it happen every time again. Well, I had the permission to shoot. So then you shot? Yes, because I had permission. It was allowed. I mean, it was
terrifying, yeah. And I know, yeah, I know people from the UK that were killed in Afghan, and well, they were young, and
shouldn't have been there. My opinion.
I don't think so. No.
But whatever. Let's.
I think we do need to learn from history. From history, Nikko. I mean, the Dutch people and the British people. You know, we've faced tyranny before.
Yeah.
Between us, you know, and we're cooperated with the rest of the free world, and we've overcome that tyranny. You know, our peoples have worked together, and you know,
yeah, but
it makes me feel proud.
It is, but the question remains: why are we so obedient right now and so conformist right now? And it's a question that's bothering me for a long time. And one of the things, and maybe you have different experiences, but one of the things I've seen over the last 30 years that we have put more and more emphasis, and we emphasize more and more consuming. We're so busy consuming that we forget all. As long as we can consume, buy bigger house, buy bigger car, buy bigger whatever. I mean, okay, that's good. And we forget about living in groups, and we forget about questioning our leadership, and we just consume and follow orders. So we're distracted in a way from the regular life that we should live, in my opinion. I mean,
yeah, yeah. I agree. We have moved away from that which is actually important in life. So, I mean, there's a few examples there. If you look at the phone calls from the Twin Towers in 9/11, you know, some of those relatives have chosen to release those phone calls, and they don't say, "Honey, you know, I wish we'd bought a bigger car."
No.
You know, they don't say, "You know, we should have had a more expensive holiday." You know, when people know they're about to die, the last message is, "Look, I love you."
Yeah.
You know, it's the human relationships that matter, and it's not all these other things that basically get in the way. And again, we're kind of force fed with this through advertising, through this culture. I mean, you mentioned the Afghan culture there. In Afghanistan, a culture we don't really understand. I don't pretend to understand it. But there again, do we understand our own culture? Because our own culture has evolved so rapidly.
Yeah.
I think, and I would agree with you, over the last 40 years, I would agree with that. We've had massive cultural evolution, and because it's our own culture, we don't recognize it for the often bizarre, ludicrous culture that it is. It's like when I look, well, I try not to look in the mirror, but when I do look in the mirror, you don't really notice your nose because it's always there.
Yep, true.
You know, and your culture's kind of like that. It's always there. So we actually think the way we're living now is normal. But if you compare it to the way that the human physiology and anatomy and social structure is designed to live, then yeah, maybe it's not so normal after all. Maybe we need some introspection on that. And it's like I said back at the start, you know, the thing about modern life is we have to eat the good bits, literally and metaphorically, eat the good bits and chuck out the bad bits. And maybe we need some more self-analysis and societal analysis to work out what really matters.
Yep. It's true. And I maybe the last 3 years have helped some people at least to get there, but I don't know, it's difficult. Let's talk a little bit.
People keep telling me about a red pill. I think that's a film called The Matrix.
Yeah.
And the red pill means that you're in contact with reality. So do we want to live in a world which is oh so nice and everything's lovely, but isn't really real? Or do we want to be aware of the pain, suffering, trauma to come?
Well,
you know, and I think we need to live in that real world, because if we're aware of the reality of that, maybe we can prevent some of the pain and trauma and suffering.
I think you're right. but I think you have the same experience I have, that I'm quite sure that you try to talk to as many people as you can as well. But I find it pretty difficult these days. And I find that a lot of people wish to stay in their comfortable world and in their warm bath. And they really, I mean, it was easier to talk 40 years ago about reality than it is now, because reality is quite comfortable with the potato chips and with the Coca-Cola and with the video games and with a certain Mr. Harari told us very clearly that our future is drugs and video games.
I don't know Mr. Harari, but
no, you better don't.
I do hope my future is not drugs and video games.
It's not, but that's what he is. Well, let's not get into that, because it sounds horrible to me. But that's the new vision of mankind, to enjoy video games and drugs, which I think is bad. But
no, I'd like to go out walking outside.
Yep. So let's keep doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but I don't know the example you mentioned, but governments and people with power around the world are trying to impose their particular version of reality. They're trying to tell us what's good for us. They're trying to tell us what's bad for us. They're trying, there are influences trying to control us.
Yep.
In ways that we haven't. We have had this before. As we've said, we've had totalitarianism in the past. The Dutch people have been oppressed, where they had to carry identity cards. They had to work in a particular way. They had to say particular things. They had to not say particular things. I think we do need to learn from that, because there are forces now that are trying to control us, trying to make us conform.
Yep.
And maybe they're not always working in our best interests. And the difference is now, with electronic surveillance, I actually believe that the opportunities for a totalitarianist are much greater than they were. In the past, it was maybe easier to hide below the radar because radar wasn't invented.
No, it's true.
And now radar is invented. And governments and international organizations are able to control, or potentially control, huge swathes of the population by electronic surveillance.
Yep. That's,
and there is that verse in the book of Revelation, that no man may buy or sell,
okay,
unless he has the mark of the beast in his forehead. Now, if you think about a situation 20 years ago where it could be controlled that you can't use money, that you can't buy or sell, that would be unimaginable.
Yep.
But now, in cashless societies, or essentially cashless societies, the theoretical potential is now there that someone could control whether you buy or sell. And if prophecies are there for any reason, one of the reasons are there is to warn us about potential dangers that we can avoid. And the potential dangers of electronic surveillance are there, and we need to take measures against that, I would have thought.
Quite honestly, as to that regard, the last 3 years gave me a warning as well. It's only over the past 3 years that I started to investigate what's really going on. I mean, I was occupied with my own life as well, in my own simple way, my hunter-gatherer way, but still I was occupied with my life. And the last 3 years I've taken a slightly different approach in seeking my information, and it scares me what's happening. I'm warning people, but I feel like someone shouting out in the desert, because it's difficult to be heard, and it's difficult because of the digitalization of the world to get your message out, because I'm cancelled. So it's simple as that. My messages are blocked. Yeah. And you still get out into the world, which is a good thing, but you have your trouble as well, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I think problems are so obvious at the moment.
Yeah.
They jump up and hit you in the face.
Yeah, but they're obvious to you and they're obvious to me, but they're not so obvious to 90% of the world. And that's that's what's scaring me. That's what's bothering me. I mean, truly, it's what keeps me awake at night. How to break through, or maybe I'm stupid. Could be. I mean,
I don't think so. Again, you know, we go back to the history. You know, Solomon Asch did these conformity experiments, and most people, it turns out, were prepared to say things that they knew weren't true because other people were saying it, and they didn't want to be the odd one out. And you know, again, we have the possibility of people with the mechanisms of control, and humans have this tendency to conform. And as you say, that voice of one in the shouting in the desert, you know, the old English version of that is the voice of one crying in the wilderness. You know, and that of course is John the Baptist.
Yeah.
In the Judean desert, and most people were just complying, following religious tradition, following Roman orders. But hey, you know, there was one man
Crying out.
One voice crying out in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord.
Oh.
You know, what one man had the vision in the whole country, and he turned out to be an instrumental prophet. And
but what do you think then? Is conformity a human condition?
yeah, I think there's a natural tendency for human beings to conform. I think that's what Solomon Asch and Stanley Milgram teaches, this seminal psychology. But you see it all around about you.
True.
You see it at work. I've done it at work. You know, there might be something at work that concerns you, and you just comply. Now, there's some things. You know, if you're an ethical human being, there's some red lines you won't cross. You would hope.
Yeah,
but a lot of other things, you just say, let's have an easy life.
But that's alarming in a way. Is there anything we can do about that? I mean, if we get into your channel for a few seconds, I'm watching you for a long time. I just by accident I found you on the internet, YouTube channel, and you had such a pleasant voice and such a pleasant way to bring a certain data-driven message to people that was quite agreeable to watch. Although at the beginning I had quite some, when I saw you 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago for the first time, I was sometimes skeptical when you said certain things, and then throughout the years I have somehow, maybe I'm wrong, seen like a revolution in your thinking. There has been a change in you. That's the way I saw it. Am I correct?
I think you are. I think it's to do with what we were talking about before. It's this erosion of trust. So as a clinical nurse and as a nurse tutor, you always had to teach the latest guidelines. So you know, if you want to talk about a drug, it's got to be in there.
Yeah.
We're in a situation where, you know, obviously at work you've got to follow guidelines, and we have National Institute for Clinical Excellence, the NICE in the UK, and they give guidelines for all these treatments. And when you're at work and when you're teaching, you have to follow the guidelines. You know, it's just what you have to do. But the trouble is, we've got, as guidelines have progressed, some people believe it's taken away the individual clinical decision making, the individualization of care. And I think that's probably true. But the point is, I just retired from full-time nursing teaching work, and I was probably still working part-time, but all our lives we'd followed the guidelines, and we had no real reason to question the guidelines. But then I started talking to, you know, really leading doctors and scientists around the world who were questioning the guidelines. And then you realize that, just a minute, this official narrative is not necessarily correct. What you've trusted all your life, the way you've thought all your life, and that's really quite difficult to accept sometimes. That just because something is a national guideline does not mean it is the correct thing to do. So yeah, you're right. I've become much more questioning, and really gone back to fundamental principles. What is the evidence? You know. So the what we're actually taught on this from the 1990s is David Sackett was the father of evidence-based medicine. And he said you have to go by the latest evidence, which is true. But the point is, the latest evidence often comes from medical journals. And what gets into medical journals is research that is done. And research that is done is research that someone has paid for.
Yep. And that's
so that means there's a whole range of research that isn't paid for, therefore doesn't get into the medical journals. So, you know, there's a distortion there, really. And the second component of evidence-based medicine is expert opinion. We go with, makes perfect sense. But if those experts in some situations have vested interest, could that distort what these experts are telling us to do? And the third component of evidence-based medicine is patient preferences. What is acceptable to me as the patient? And that's predicated on a fundamental principle of informed consent. But if there's question marks over what is researched and what is not researched, if there's question marks over international expert opinion, then how can I possibly have the knowledge to have informed consent? I can't. So that means these three fundamental principles of evidence-based medicine, the evidence, can't fully trust that anymore. Expert opinion, can't fully trust that anymore. Sometimes we can, but not always. My individual preferences based on informed consent, well, the knowledge is there. How can there be informed consent? So I think really, I'd like to think, I've tried to be loyal to these principles of evidence-based medicine. But the difficulty is, it's very difficult now to do that. And we're also in the situation where some information is permissible and some information is not permissible. How can we have got into this situation where there's some things you're allowed to talk about and there's some things you aren't allowed to talk about? And this has crept up on us, actually not that slowly. It's crept up, it's come on us fairly quickly, actually.
The latter part is crept up.
And you know, when I'm now, of course, you know, you have to choose who you talk to, but the people I talk to are professors, consultants, career scientists, and when people like this question, I believe it's pretty stupid not to at least listen to their opinions. But there's ranges of opinions now that we're simply not allowed to discuss, and I just find that intrinsically annoying. If someone says to me, you can't talk about that, then because I'm a bit mischievous, I think, oh no, actually I quite like to talk about that. And that's kind of the situation that we're in, unfortunately. And it's not good for the development of science. It's not good for, you know, science progresses on debate, on discussion. Used to, yeah. And maybe some aspects of science still do. Maybe, but even then, if you look at physics and chemistry, again, that can be very commercially driven. So, you know, let's go to the town square. Let's have an open debate. Let the best ideas survive. Let there be a natural selection. Yeah, but there's so many people are preaching or praying for open debate, and they simply don't get it. We are being censored. And it's one of the beautiful things, I think, in your daily podcasts, because quite often I hear you say, don't take my word for it. Don't trust me. Just look at the evidence yourself. You say it often. And look at the descriptions below and go to the links. And that, in my opinion, is what science is supposed to be. I mean, you discover something, you get the data, you bring them out, and you encourage people to still use their own common sense. And that, for some reason, has gone out of our societies. And I mean, it has been somehow bred into us to blindly follow authority. And if I look at my country, the authority the last 3 years, for example, when it came to health, is the authority of a guy who used to be a school teacher. He schooled children of about 10 years of age. And the next day, he was the Minister of Health. And I'm supposed to trust him.
And he's the one who, for example, told me 2 years ago that I would certainly die that winter if I didn't take part in a certain procedure, which I refused. I'm still alive. And he gets away with it. I mean, he literally told me through the television that if I didn't participate, I would die. And so did, if I remember well, the President of the United States. I mean, those are
and of course these authority messages are the ones that are promoted in the traditional legacy media, and most people just seem to go with that, because if information is controlled, it's often said the first casualty of war is truth.
Yeah.
And we have to struggle for the truth now. We have to analyze it ourselves. We have to be more sociable. If we have local groups of people, then you'll find that one person's good at practical things. You'll find that one person's good at academic things. You'll find that one person's good at languages. You find that one person's good at science or medicine. And we can come together in local groups and discuss these things, and work out what is likely to be correct for ourselves and our own small social groups. And again, there's this lack of cooperation, this lack of local socializing, I think is part of the problem. We need to be able to talk through ideas with people that we trust.
Yeah, but then I'm so afraid
that's maybe missing now.
Well, we have to take money out of the equation.
Yeah.
Because as long as it's there, we will not be able to talk anymore. It's the fear I have. I mean, the last 3 years, I don't know how it is with you, but I lost a lot of friends in that sense that I used to have really tough debates with my friends, which I loved. Yeah. Evenings that went on and on and on about whichever topic. Now we talk about the weather. And again,
that I find that really sad, Nikko. That is really.
There is no. I mean,
relationships have become superficial.
It is. If I, which I like to do, refer to an investigation or a research while I'm talking to someone, I have had discussions over the phone where I had the research literally laying in my lap, and people telling me, "Oh, Nikko Norte knows what's happening in the world, and it's not in the newspapers. Who do you think you are?" My good friends, who should know that I had the paper in my lap, and proper conversation has gone down the drain as well in a lot of cases. And
yeah,
how
again we've excuse me, we've been warned about these things.
It's true.
We're warned about an organization called the Ministry of Truth.
Yep.
And the idea that there's a single ministry of truth is a terrifying Orwellian concept. And because we've been warned about this, we should guard against it.
Yeah, but we don't.
Not enough.
But how do you survive that respect with your channel? Because I've heard you say that you try to follow the guidelines as good as you can. For example, the YouTube guidelines, and you often refer to them. How will we survive in this world? How do you cope with it?
Well, you're right. Media guidelines have to be navigated. And a lot of it at the moment works on artificial intelligence, I think. Mm-hmm. So I'm not too interested in artificial intelligence. I'm more interested in human intelligence. And, I think if you kind of work out a way to communicate with other human beings, mm-hmm. with all the gestures that we have as human beings and all the non-verbal communications that we have, if you get my drift, Nikko, as human beings, people are missing that human-to-human contact. And, people watching don't know me, but, I do try. I'm a fallible human being, of course, you get it wrong. But I do try to be honest, and as far as possible, it's not always possible for various reasons, but when knowledge changes, I'll try and come back and bring that up to date, and I'll try and correct that.
No, in a way, I know you shy away if I compliment you, but from the start, you did not just communicate by words. I mean, you, in my opinion, a master in using everything you have in your communication. And that's one of the reasons I've, from the start, being attracted to your channel, because I always had the feeling, here is a development going on. Here is someone who is trying to read between the lines and trying to convince me to do the same. And you have certain ways which I admire to get people to truly listen to you. It's not just words, it's like the whole man who's communicating. And
yeah, I mean, it does sound a bit pompous, but I am genuinely interested in human well-being.
Yeah.
You know, if I can prevent human pain, suffering, and death, then that's what I'll do. That's what I spent my life doing. And if you just try and communicate that as honestly as you can. Now there is a bit of electronic trickery to it. You know, you've got to have a reasonable quality microphone so that you know, the quality of your voice is important. You've got to have a reasonable quality camera. My son has got to set up quite a lot of technical things from it I haven't got a clue about. But basically it's just using, you know, when you're a clinical nurse, very often you're working with people who are distressed, in pain all the time, dying, bereaved. And, you know, if you're genuine, I suppose over 40, 45 years of practice, you do kind of work out a way to come alongside, is the best you can do, really. You know, could come alongside people that are in a difficult situation. And you know, but because I have no skills in the area of music or artistry or acting, no skills at all. All I can do is be me. I'm not saying this is necessarily me completely. You know, people that know me will say that I'm much grumpier than this, or, you know, John's not really this friendly, or and I'll accept all that. But, you know, it is, this is, you know, the teaching, what you might call clinical role. It's the only one I have. It is, it's quite hard work sometimes, but it is. I think maybe people do see that that's genuine. It's just me, but I am trying, and maybe people recognize that. I don't know.
I've been with you on an interesting voyage. That's the way I see it, and that's the way I hear many people talk about you. It was a voyage.
Oh yeah.
All which we learned, and
yeah. But we have to move with the evidence. If we're not evidence-based, we're living in a parallel universe that's not real.
No, but that's the thing that hurts me for you, that whatever you do is extremely data-driven. And it's not just data-driven, it's understandable for everyone. I mean, you could have 2 dance classes and nothing more educational-wise, and you would still be able to understand what you're saying. It's a capacity you have to make things very clear, very understandable.
It is data, Nikko, but it's also applying basic principles. So, you know that there are some basic principles that you learn from a lifetime teaching in healthcare, and you know, situations where they need to be applied. And one of the things I feel disappointed in myself about is sometimes I've been influenced by the mainstream narrative rather than going back to the fundamental basic science. So for example, I first learnt about the immune system when I was a teenager, and then when I was doing my Bachelor of Science degree in my 30s, I learnt about the immune system in a great deal of detail. And then in future work, I've learnt about the immune system. And you know, the innate immune system is a truly wonderful thing. And since then, I've worked, interviewed leading physicians, really leading physicians around the world who've taught me way more. I mean, Professor Clancy in Australia, we did a whole series on immunity, and it's just like we're sitting talking now. There's just him and me sitting having a chat, but you're talking to one of the world's leading authorities on this, and you just learn so much. So there's these principles that we can apply to you know, basic knowledge that we can apply that's not going to change. You know, basic physics worked out by Isaac Newton in 1660 or whatever it was isn't going to change. It can be refined, but still, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And if you forget that basic stuff, and it's the same with things like physiology, human health, natural immunity, these are fundamental things that reflect the way the world is. And if you forget those because of an authority figure, that's a problem. That's why I wrote my textbooks, the basic physiology, the basic pathophysiology. It's just really basic things. There's nothing clever in them, but you cover all these basic things that are based on the science that we've learned since the Enlightenment. Since Prince William from the Netherlands came to rescue the British people from a difficult situation. Thank you. You've helped us out in the past. We've stood side by side, and not everyone in the UK would agree with that, of course. But it does show the commonality of our history and our peoples, which is a thing to celebrate. But we've been working on these Enlightenment scientific principles all this time, and we have them. And it would be really sad if science were subjugated to vested interests. That would be tragic. Because we have the science.
But problem is,
no one is the science.
No.
No one can claim to be the science. I wouldn't say, listen, I'm John Campbell, I am the science.
No, but
I would consider that to be arrogant.
Yeah, but
the fact that some people have indicated in that direction, I do find disappointing. But there is science there, and we can tap into that, and it's not the only way to truth. Of course not. We learn truth through history. We learn truth through our spirituality. But science is one way that we do learn about truth, and we need to apply those principles.
But there is a problem, because those two words, the science, I've heard too often over the last 3 years. It scares the shit out of me, because there is no the science.
No.
There is science, and it should be looked at from all kinds of perspectives. But
we are blessed with great scientists that will talk to you and me.
Yeah, but the problem is that when I was much younger, people told me that I had to go to school and do the best I could, because then and only then could I be a great scientist. And then I went to school, and I thought, well, if this is it, if I have to sit here for a year and learn what I could learn in like a week and a half, that's horrible. Can't be science. But at the same time, I think, and I don't know how you see this, I believe in study, and I believe in research, and I believe in everything that has to do with science, but I don't believe in our schooling system. That is a problem. And just because I didn't believe it, I could find my own path. I could, for example, write my own scientifically based book, but I didn't follow the science as in the science. I just...
I think we're in a situation now where you can, to a large extent, research your own particular topic that you're interested in. But there again, I think especially in medicine, it is difficult because of the vested interest that we talked about, which can distort the knowledge that is available. That's why I believe it's so important to go back to the fundamental principles of science that don't really change and that we can apply. The world does work in a particular way. We don't understand most of it, but there are a few simplified models that we do understand. And if we apply these, we do come out with things that are really quite sensible. And I agree with you. We need to go back and learn about these and bear in mind they exist. And if something completely contradicts the basic science, then it's probably wrong.
But it's still, you still should have a look at it, because
you're
right. I mean, it's a difficult situation. I don't know how we and it's getting harder to contribute to a more open mindset in people, because we're controlled, we're censored, and that's difficult. I have not found an answer circumvent it, to get the message out. And my only message is do your own research, which is something that has been I've not been allowed to say that for 3 years, because there was quite an issue in America to not do your own research. But
and I think the other thing we talked about is try and develop a local group of people that you do trust, that you can talk about, where you can pool expertise. And yeah, we should be free human beings to come up with our own answers, whether that's about ecology, whether that's about politics, whether that's about science, whether it's about our health. You know, freedom of thought should be completely fundamental.
Yeah.
And you know, at the moment there are people trying to control thought, and that is a bit frightening.
It is very frightening, especially.
Again, we were warned about this. The group called the Thought Police.
Yeah.
We were warned about this. If we don't take warnings from these, you know, there's a reason that George Orwell has become one of the world's greatest authors, because he has something to say today.
Yeah, still, it's true.
And maybe we will be arrogant to dismiss his warnings.
I don't know. I find it hard to just have a proper conversation with people and something, and I tried to figure out what it was, but I had this stupid idea that the day we had obligated schooling, from that day onwards, we've become more stupid.
Yeah, I mean, education, of course, can be used as a modality of control. I mean, I spent a year doing a certificate of education once, and you know, you kind of look into these things. You know, is there a pedagogy of oppressed people? Was one of the popular books, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. The education can be used, and again, we've seen tragic examples of this in relatively recent European history, where a generation can be schooled in a particular way of thinking, and that's had dramatic consequences in relatively recent European history.
I can only admit that what saved me when I went to school for the first time, and I looked forward to it because I thought, well, now the big learning is going to start, and it didn't. But what saved me were my books, because I read when I was a young child, and I read a lot. And the first day at school, things were told to me that I thought, well, maybe it's true, but it's not really like I read in my books. And so I was skeptical from the start. And when I looked left or right, I just saw children looking at the whoever was in front of the class, and okay. I mean, I lived in great times. Many times it has been told to me, the times I lived in were great, because in the past it was worse, and in other countries it is worse. And I thought, I'm not a strong argument. I mean, I was 7, but I thought, nah, it's not a good argument. Was it so bad in the earlier days? Is it so bad in other countries? And the only thing I wanted was to explore. I didn't have a time machine, but I could travel. So I went to all these other countries, and it's something I wanted to talk to you about, because you have an interest in Africa and Asia. But I went to all these other countries, and those people didn't live badly. They lived differently, which is not bad. And a lot of poverty I saw in Africa was Western imposed poverty, because we could have left those people alone and try to leave them to fend for themselves. And they can in Asia, they can in Africa. But I mean, you have a special interest in Asia and Africa, but especially with Uganda, I think.
Yeah, we've got a project that we're cooperating with in Uganda, Buanga Way to Health.
Okay.
We work with a medical officer there called Wafafa Andrew primarily. It's very small scale, but it is we believe it's helping a lot of people. So I was out there last year, hoping to get out again fairly soon. There's a lot of situations where a relatively small input can make a really big difference. So now we could argue about the causes of poverty, but the poverty is real, and so sometimes just helping people in a relatively minor way can be transformational. So, for example, when Rafafa goes around doing medical calls, he'll usually take a tree and we'll plant a fruit tree. So that's going to provide, food into the next generation. We've as well as medical work and helping individuals, we've done quite a lot to promote health in communities. So simple things like screening for high blood pressure, screening for diabetes. We've given out quite a lot of mosquito nets because it's just tragic how many children still die of malaria. Terrible. We've had several children die of malaria. He hasn't got there in time, and it's terrible tragedy. So again, let's try and prevent that. Let's, relatively simple interventions. I think we're giving out 1,500, a couple of thousand mosquito nets. And, there's no question in my mind that's saved lives from people getting malaria.
Yeah, but I find this interesting because I work with a lot of bigger organizations in Africa, or at least try to work with them. And what I found out, what I discovered and what I believe is that when individuals were involved, they were doing good things in Africa. Like you're as an individual handing out mosquito nets, which is very tangible. It's simple. But the bigger the organizations went, there was a point when I felt they were only doing harm instead of doing any good. So I believe in these individual exploits as to helping people, because often they work. But as soon as
I can't speak to all the bigger ones. I simply don't have the knowledge to do that. But I know that what we're doing, I'm convinced it works. It's largely based on friendship, to be quite honest. Based on trust. Based in a small scale situation. So we avoid Western hegemony. It's not me telling him what to do. We develop and use local expertise wherever possible. We have a small number of trusted people, so hopefully we don't have the problems with corruption that can be an issue. And we try and do things that are consistent with the local ecology in a local way. So I mentioned planting fruit trees. We've also we grow some crops. We grow maize. We intercrop that with beans. We've recently developed a mill, so we're able to produce the flour ourselves now. That can be sold at a modest profit. With that, we are buying food for children there's 200 orphans locally who would struggle for good quality food. So we're able to feed those now. We've recently just built a large chicken facility for chickens, for eggs. So, these are relatively small scale local projects aimed at improving health, providing a little bit of employment, helping with education, treating diseases in specific situations, helping people with diseases. Very often the interventions that are required are relatively simple. So, people's lives can be saved by giving antimalarials or giving antibiotics.
How do you fund your operation? How does it work?
Well, people make donations to it. The channel does support it directly, money that comes from the channel. So it's pretty small scale, but it's the channel, it's individuals who are interested. Sometimes people will take on a particular project. So, Rafafa will perhaps do a video where he identifies, and this is the good aspect of the internet. This is a good aspect of communication. Someone with a particular problem, maybe it will require surgery. And quite a few times someone has thought, I think I'll help that individual. And they've sent money to provide a surgery or treatment or a facility for that particular individual. And so again, it's bringing it back down to the personal scale. Whereas one individual, is maybe given a few $100s so that another individual can have maybe some surgery that can be life-saving or transformational. So it's bringing things back down to the individual level, not at the large sort of scale level that I don't understand.
And as I hear you talk, you don't want to step over cultural boundaries and impose our Western way of thinking on those people in Africa, which I think should be the basis of helping out people. Trust, friendship, as you said, and not trying to impose a way of living on other people. Just help them.
Yeah. I mean, the word we like to use is synergy.
Yeah.
It's better than the whole is better than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
That's what we would hope. If we don't achieve that, the project's failed. But I don't believe it is failing. I believe it's doing really quite significant things. And I think it's a potential model that other people could follow in other areas.
Yeah.
But based on interpersonal relationships, based on relatively small scale, getting trusted people together. I mean, the other thing we're doing is we've just bought 10 sewing machines.
Hey.
Treadle sewing machines.
Yeah.
You just moving them with your feet. We've got a local expert who's training up people to become skilled in self-sufficient sewing. We can sell these. We've got skills again. The sewing machines are about $150, $160 each.
Yeah.
But if you haven't got $160, that's an infinite amount of money.
Yeah.
But we bought 10 sewing machines, and that provides employment for 20 people. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, but the most important word you used is self-sufficient.
Absolutely,
that's the most important word, because if not, everything's lost. I think if we start.
The other kind of catchphrase, if you like, or principle is empowerment, not aid.
Yeah, true. It's
very much about empowering individuals, and I guess that's what we're trying to do here as well. Give people the information to empower themselves to become independent thinkers again.
That's good. And you're leaving for Uganda soon again?
I'm hoping to go next year. Well, it should be very disappointing not to go next year at some point. It's just a question of when we can fit that in. Yeah, but really hope so. Yeah,
because you did quite some of your podcasts from Uganda,
and we did quite a few videos there. Yeah, it's always nice to. It's always nice to do live interview. This technology is great. It's a lot better than nothing.
But well, I particularly enjoyed the podcast you made with the doctor you work with, because he was quite sobering up in what was then the issue. He gave his opinion about how it was in Africa, and it was like really refreshing to hear him.
Basically, it looked like COVID just kind of swept through the country. Most people got a pretty minor cold, and that was it. And for years now, it's simply been no issue. And I think it's fair to say that most of the immunity in Uganda is not caused by sophisticated scientific, shall we say, vaccinations and other procedures. It was just based on, trying to optimize health and people getting natural immunity. And they don't even consider it now. It's not. The doctors don't see people ill with COVID now.
No, it was.
Or very, very, very rarely if they do.
I found it very interesting to hear your colleague talk about what happened there, and he was like, oh, nothing wrong. It's okay here, and it was fun to watch. I'm
not minimizing it too much. There were things, but basically they've got over it in mostly a natural way. Wafafa himself, for example, was never vaccinated.
No,
and he works with sick people all the time. But there again, he's young and fit. You can't generalize these things.
No, and it's I do my best to just skip the subject, because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, we could talk about it for hours probably, but it's whenever I go out on the streets, it doesn't make any sense. And I understand. I mean, I understand people in a way. I just try to subtly change their minds, and it's difficult. And I think you do a great thing as to that regard. I don't think it's even good to try and change people's minds. Just give them information. Well, give people science and let them decide. Facilitate that process. I'm with you, but when I talk about changing people's minds, it's more because of what we talked about earlier in perceiving authority. Please read something else than the regular papers is what I try to convince people of, like to get into these alternative media and try to inform yourself in a broader scope than you're doing when you read that newspaper every day, because there's nothing in there.
Yeah, learn from John the Baptist, learn from Solomon Ash, learn from Stanley Milgram, learn from George Orwell. We stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah, doing a show today, a podcast.
Probably. I did a video yesterday with Dr. Tess Lawrie on the new World Health Organization goings on, shall we say. There's always interesting things to do. It's just a case of how much capacity you've got. I'm doing a great episode at the moment with standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, I've talked to great professors and doing a great series at the moment with Dr. Claire Craig, British pathologist. So I'm hoping to do a bit more reading and finish off the series with her. It's just we have such dedicated, good quality people out there.
Oh man, there's a lot of them, but it's hard to listen to hear them because they're censored in a way. And,
yeah, we have to use human to human communication and try and avoid the artificial intelligence. We want human intelligence. Don't we, Nikko?
I see the point. It was extremely lovely to talk to you. I hope to stay in contact with you because it's lovely. But I see you basically every day when you do your podcast.
Thank you.
I hope you keep doing it. I hope you find ways to get the proper message out. I hope you look down and see that we stand on the shoulders of giants and learn.
And let's all work out ways to help ourselves and, more importantly, help those around us.